Please do not turn off your radio, but turn up the volume on your receiver as high as it can go.
This radio show is certified fantastic.
Let's go.
This is your radio, your station.
It's now time for Guest Lounge 2.0. As you know, we do it every single Thursday where we bring wholesome individuals, inspirational individuals, authentic individuals. And this Thursday is no different. This morning, I will be chatting to Lungile Manzinga of Where is My Masculinity? I'm looking forward to this conversation because my technical producer and I have been having off-air back and forths, and I'm really hoping that Lungile is going to help us resolve that. Just talking about masculinity, and he just, we started talking about toxic masculinity. Look, we've got the right man to answer all of these questions. Good morning, Lungile, and welcome to the show.
Good morning, Snu. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I really appreciate that you could be able to make the time to speak to us this morning.
Sure, it's definitely a topic I'm very passionate about.
First of all, thank you for the amazing work that you have been doing with Where is My Masculinity. I have seen, I've watched some of the videos on YouTube, and quite a risk you took there, quite a risk. But let's get into Where is My Masculinity?
Well, Where's My Masculinity is a platform that seeks to have open and very frank discussions about the different aspects of masculinity.
Okay.
And to normalize these conversations, not just on platforms like this, but also in our social spaces, in friendships, in relationships, etc. And that, in a nutshell, is what Where My Masculinity is.
And right after that, the question that would follow is, then what is masculinity? And I ask that question, Lungile, because in the era we are in the season we are in as a country, it's hard for masculinity to go, by itself. It's always toxic masculinity. So what exactly is masculinity?
Well, that's a great question, because part of the description on the YouTube channel says that part of what we're trying to do is to answer that exact question.
Right.
And we understand that there's, I would call it a template of what masculinity is that we've been handed by our parents' generation, right? Which was pretty straightforward in terms of the man is the provider, and he doesn't have to be there emotionally or anything else. So,
sure.
And then in this day and age, because people's lived experiences are different, and they, I think, have self-actualized in ways that are different than the previous generation, how they choose to define masculinity for themselves is completely different. Right. So I know that doesn't answer your question about what is masculinity, but I think the whole point is for us to get to a point where we can figure out what are the nuances,
You've explored so many different topics on the Where is My Masculinity platform, one of which was basically the identity of men and the relationship between men, money, and their identity. And I found that to be quite fascinating, because we are at a time, in our society where we keep saying men must be vulnerable, men must speak up. If you don't have money, tell me, I got you. And when they do it, it's like, okay, look, this is a bit too much. I was saying a plan in bed. We can't be talking about this all the time. So what are some of, the fascinating factors that you have been able to draw out of the discussions you've had with your guests on Where's My Masculinity?
I'm not one about money, power, and identity. I think it's a very fascinating one, because we also recently had a public screening where we watched an episode I did with Dr. Tabangsa Falafala from
Yes.
the university.
Yes.
And he did this incredible work looking at these mine workers who'd lost their jobs, and what did the loss of being able to earn a wage mean for them in terms of how society saw them and how they perceive themselves as men. And the key insight, and you juxtapose that with hashtag introspect, right?
Yes.
And so on this particular thing, or this particular topic, I think it's still very much predominant that men are expected to identify themselves or have some kind of value or worth based on what they earn, right? And even in some of the discussions that happen off camera, some men would tell you that, I'm very clear, if I'm not in a certain income bracket, then I might as well not even bother asking a woman out or anything like that.
Yeah.
So to your point that you were making earlier about men also being vulnerable, because that's how they identify, they know if they are then in a situation where they're not able to earn, they don't see the point of being vulnerable, because already by virtue of not being that kind of man that earns that money, you already regarded as, guarantee what do you bring to the table?
Sure. Hey, I am the table. Right.
Right. And I think it's these discussions, not only amongst men, but us in general society, men and women will be willing to, unpack these things.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that comes out quite strongly in another episode we did with Mervyn around the Holding Space Project is all of these things are things that men carry inside of them, right? That they don't necessarily talk about, amongst other, trauma things. And you'll probably know that, we have amongst the highest suicide rates in the world amongst men.
Amongst men, yes.
Yes.
Sure. Quite interesting facts that are coming out. I mean, when it comes to men and money, I might be playing devil's advocate here, Lungile, but I need you to just speak to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it not men who bring up these discussions about money unprovoked? Are they not the same people that will go and brag about it to their friends? Are they not the same people that will talk about it in family settings, in households? Or are we also as a society responsible for how men are wired and just how they are programmed?
Yeah, so on that, when you say, if it's not men that would, also show that they've got money and stuff, you're 100% correct. And that's because I think society, in as much as we say, for argument's sake, that we want to break the patriarchy, the reward system itself actually keeps patriarchy in place. In this particular instance, right? Even basic things in society, if a man walks into a room, right, the first couple of questions sometimes that you would ask someone is, oh, what's your name? And then there's the, what do you do?
Of course.
Right? Because then in your mind, if the person says, for argument's sake, they work in a certain kind of job, in your mind you are trying to rank the respect that you give them. Right? So the man that knows he's an executive or whatever knows that society is going to treat him differently because he's in a higher social ranking or financial ranking. So for sure, because the system allows it, he's going to make sure that he drops in a thing about the fact that he owns a luxury car, or he there's no input he's getting to correct that behavior, because society, and when I say society, it's all of us that's actively rewarding that. And hence even things like the rise of us talking about sugar daddies and play queens, right? It's men with money that know that even though it's 2023, if I can say I'll buy you an all expenses trip to wherever, halfway across the world, he wouldn't really struggle to have takers, right? Because the system still rewards that. So yeah, in my opinion, that's what we're playing. We say we want to dismantle, but I think we still behave in ways that actually justifies why we should still have a very strongly patriarchal.
Now, Lungile, as promised, let's get straight into some of the conversations that you have had on Where Is My Masculinity. And please feel free to, watch those videos. Everything is up on YouTube. Simply search for Where Is My Masculinity. The way I'm saying it, there's no funny spelling or anything unique. It's really just like that, but very important conversations. There's been conversations where tribal lines feature, and I just want to find out from you how much of a role does that play in, us reshaping and redefining masculinity as a society? Lungile?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Did you get my question?
Yes, I got your question.
Sure.
I think when I talk of, a template of masculinity that was, handed down from the previous generation, I think there's a different number of things within that template, and culture or, tribal affiliation is definitely one of them. Now, why I brought it up on the channel is to say, if you are someone that obviously is very rooted in your traditional African identity, but you are operating in a context that's a modern society in Joburg, Pretoria, whatever the case may be, what is it within how you're viewed as a traditional Xhosa man, a Zulu man, or whatever the case may be, that you opt in and out of to function in a modern context, right? And the fact that you decide that there's certain things about your culture that you don't agree with, so that means that you can no longer claim to identify as a Zulu man, Xhosa man, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Particularly in a context where most of these cultures in themselves also ultimately also built on patriarchy. So are we choosing sides, right? Are we on a non-patriarchal man in the office, but then when I get home, it's traditional. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, but it's about those layers. Right?
I hear you. I hear you, because also there's this conversation about preference that I think we are running away from as a society, preference and double standards, if I'm being honest, Lungile, because if you want to be a pro-woman kind of man at the office, where you will hold the door for the ladies at the office, help them carry heavy stuff and so on and so forth, but when you go home, it's like, I don't care if we both have been working, but I need you to cook and I need you to do it now. You know what I mean? It could be stemming also from a point of preference, that I prefer to have, freshly cooked home meals every single day, and I prefer to have that done by my partner. So it's quite a tricky one, and I'm glad that you've already started the very difficult journey of exploring these conversations, because we've come to learn that conversations that have to do with men, masculinity, healing, don't always go very far, but you have been just going on and on and on. What are some of the ways you think as a society we can continue to build or create safe spaces for men to open up, for men to speak, so we don't speak on their behalf?
I think it starts with us men, and I'll tell you why. One of the conversations I had with author Melissa Chabalala on the show happened soon after Ricky passed away, right? And one of the conversations we were having was what generally happens when, in this tragic case where he took his life. There's always these public discourses about, why are men not opening up? Why don't men talk and all of that?
Yes.
And the reality is, the hard truth that men also need to hear is that even in our own friendships, right, we don't have necessarily the safe space to even open up to each other.
True.
Because one of the examples Melissa shared in his book is they used to get together as guys do, and you're watching the match, and there used to be this one friend that used to come and talk about his problems. And no one was trying to hear it. They even nicknamed him Umakalanjalo, right? And it got to a point where this man realized, okay, fine, I can't open up to these guys that are my so-called friends. And the guy ended up taking his own life, right? So it's about saying, we as men can't say that there are no safe spaces for us to talk if we as men within the spaces we occupy as friends and whatever are not even opening our mouths to our best friends to say, dude, this is what I'm going through. Or even WhatsApp groups, WhatsApp groups, which are quite popular. I'm sure most of them, it's guys talking sports. It's talking everything that's a distraction to some of our issues, right? There's a few of them that I've seen where maybe it's a group of dads, right? And they're talking about how do you navigate fatherhood and all of that. So on this one, my answer would be, I think the onus is also on us as men to create those spaces for ourselves, because who else must? To your point about not speaking on behalf of men, who else must? It must be us, right? Yeah.
Sure. Lungile, thank you so much for, just unpacking this conversation, this topic rather, and giving us so many insights, because if there is one thing that we need to understand as a society is that as much as we call men names, but no two men are the same, They might do the same things, support the same soccer team, but there's really, it's not like men are a homogeneous group of people.
Exactly.
They are different. They are, as different as the rest of us in society. So thank you so much for, again, doing the work that you do. Any plans moving forward with regards to, screenings around the province, maybe around the country?
Yes, so at the moment we are planning to do our next screening around June. So what we do is it's a free event where we basically screen upcoming episodes in snippets, and then we have deep discussions and drive engagement. And if we can collaborate and get partnerships to help sponsor, we definitely would want to take this conversation nationally, community halls and all of that kind of stuff, because it's definitely important conversations to have. And it's important that in these conversations, we also don't degenerate into what tends to happen on social media, which is why I created this platform, where no one is really listening to each other, where, we're talking past each other, and it's basically, I said what I said. No, that's not helpful either. And this is what we've seen, that when we do these public screenings, the engagement and the vulnerability and openness from a complete group of strangers who came to watch this is quite something. So you can find us on YouTube, as you said. We're also on Instagram, World Masculinity ZA, and on the Instagram pages where we generally post, upcoming episodes, and where you can contact us to attend one of our upcoming screenings.
Lungile Manzinga of Where Is My Masculinity, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us. We look forward to chatting to you soon, because we also know that as much as June is Youth Month, is also, a time where we celebrate fathers who are essentially men. So I'm super excited, and I'm looking forward to more of our discussions on this platforms or on other platforms outside of this. But keep up the amazing work that you are doing. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
There you have it.